What's up, Wealth Nation? We are doing a reaction video today off of CNBC's Make It series. Now, we have a video that we are going to be sharing with you, which is how to live off of $45,000 a year in Washington, D.C. Now, being that we are right across the bridge in Virginia, we know that $45,000 is a little tight when it comes to making it in the DMV area. So we wanted to share this with you because we saw this video and thought, you know what, it's really thoughtful. The reaction that this individual gave is really thought-provoking and made us think like, you know what, we should share this with our viewers.
Right. Absolutely. Because what I want you to really pay attention to is just how he manages his expenses and what's important, what's a need versus want, and how he navigates that whole thing to live off of $45,000 in Washington, D.C.
And the other thing to note before we play this video is that it's really important for us to just take a moment and really scrutinize our expenses, because this person is living in the nation's capital with $45,000 a year, which isn't a huge salary, and he's doing very well for himself. And it's because he has a job for every single dollar that he has, and he has a plan. And once you have a plan, you can totally make things work, which is why we're always trying to teach you on the Wealth Nation channel that you need to have a plan for your finances. So don't just believe what we say. Let's go ahead and watch this video.
Service. I think it's very important to give back to the country that you love. And I want future generations to be able to look at someone from Asian American descent and say, wow, I can be like that individual. I can be in politics as well. My name is Victor Yang. I'm 26 years old and I make $45,000 and I live in Washington, D.C. I'm a legislative staffer, meaning I track legislation and brief the member of Congress. I think the most important lesson that I've learned about money is that one needs to be very disciplined in how they spend and to ensure that they spend it efficiently.
All right. So the first thing he said is you need to be very disciplined on how you spend. That's just what we were talking about in the introduction to this video, is you have to be super intentional. And if we look at his expenses, he makes $3,140 every single month. And if we think about the 50-30-20 rule, with 50% of your income being fixed expenses, which is your housing, medical, and your transportation.
Correct.
The necessities, we take a look at his housing is $1,600. I don't see anything as far as transportation. And I'm sure because he lives in the capital, he can use public transportation. And we just really see how he has a job for every single thing that he does. Even his emergency fund is at the bottom where he says emergency fund, thrift, and savings plan. It's all in that $638 that he saves every single time that he gets paid.
Yeah. And again, when people think about budgeting, making a plan, whatever you want to call it, it's really just about allocating your finances accordingly. Because with our jobs, we have certain procedures and protocols that we have to stand for and stand by. We need to do the same thing with our finances. However, that never really happens. We end up just getting money, spending it, and not having a plan for it. So again, if you just look at what you see on the screen here, there is money allocated in certain categories, and you can just see exactly where the spending is going. So every single month, you know where your money is going, because if you don't know where your money is going, we're having a problem from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think it becomes complicated when we have debt.
Of course.
Because as I look at his budget, he doesn't have any debt.
I was going to say that there's no payments going anywhere else
other than his housing.
Yep. Totally interesting. So, all right, let's keep going. Let's see what we got.
Efficiently. From a financial standpoint, my default tends to be saving, and I don't usually spend money unless it's an expense that I really feel like is necessary, which is food, water, shelter, and daily living requirements.
Wow, that's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I know, verbatim.
That's exactly what it is. And that's what we talk about as far as the 50-20-30 rule. So 50% should be your mandatory expenses, food, water, shelter.
that you need to survive. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. And I love how he said he doesn't feel like he has to spend money. A lot of times as consumers, we can be persuaded to spend money irresponsibly for things that we don't really need right now or things that aren't going to serve us. So we really need to start understanding our emotional ties and how that's affecting how we make transactions, because that can severely rob us because we're being emotional about something instead of logical about the transactions we're making.
Absolutely. Now, what he said before I hit pause is he said his default is savings.
Yeah.
What was your default?
Spend money.
Yeah. And my default, I think, was savings, but I didn't go about it the right way.
Yeah.
So how do you get a default? Your default is what you're most used to doing. Is that something
programming?
That's exactly what I wanted to get to.
Yeah. Your default is what you've seen
and what you've learned throughout or what up until that point.
Yeah. So you have to take a step back and look at, what did my parents do? And, what was my environment like? So I would say for me, that was my programming, because I always saw that money was around, money was plentiful. And so I just always assumed that you spend money.
Right.
And then I know it was different for you.
Yeah. It was the absolute opposite. Money wasn't always around. It was something that you had to work hard to get. And once you have it, you need to keep it as long as you can so that you have something to fall back on.
Yeah, exactly. So let's keep going. Let's see what he's talking about.
First gen mindset.
My parents, being first generation immigrants, really taught me the importance of making sure that you can maximize everything that you are provided. My parents immigrated to the United States in their 30s, a decade behind some of their peers who immigrated in their 20s. And so they really needed to make the most out of their finances and their time that they were allocated. And I think that is very influential in my spending habits, as well as my career aspirations.
Completely. What do you want to say about that?
It's 100% everything that we just said.
Lost my glasses. Go ahead.
It's 100% everything that we just said. That because of how his parents taught him how to think about money is the reason why his default was savings. They're first generation immigrants from another country, and money wasn't always plentiful for them.
And I also have to say too, with different cultures and different backgrounds, how people utilize money is very different. And this is a general statement, right? Of a complete blanket statement. But I would definitely say, from what I've learned from the Asian community and my friends inside the Asian community, is they were brought up learning about money and treating money a certain way. And so I totally feel like, from what we've learned, from what we see from that cultural standpoint, is they have a leg up on a lot of other cultures because
of their programming.
Yeah, because of their programming, because they all come together, because they know about generational wealth, and because it's always about preserving the next generation. So I would even have to say that it's amazing that he was brought up with this information, because a lot of people aren't.
Yeah. And one thing I would say also is it doesn't take a lot of money to make sure that you do have generational wealth, because the same way this family came over in the 90s, they've instilled in him the importance of saving money. Now he's able to live off of $45,000.
Very good point. In a city,
and he donates
on top of all of that. Absolutely. All right, let's keep it going. Being a homeowner, $45,000. He's a homeowner.
Prior to purchasing a house in this neighborhood, I rented here. And one of the things that I love to do in neighborhoods is to walk around and meet everyone here. I play basketball at the basketball court. I meet my neighbors. I bike around and really put myself out there in the community. And I think that's something that's very important for anyone who is looking to buy a house. I decided to buy because I felt that it was a good investment for my future, and because I wanted to put my money somewhere instead of just giving it to someone else through renting. My parents helped me buy my house because they felt that it was important to be financially stable, and because they were first generation immigrants and they really struggled with home ownership and being able to find stability in a new country.
Game changer.
That is huge.
Game changer. And the reason why I say that this is a game changer is because whenever you have your parents who are involved with helping you with your financial goals and aspirations, like homeownership, it's an amazing two-way street, because not only have the parents invested in the house, they have an asset, depending, where you live and on all of those things. But then now they have the kids contributing to the mortgage, which is a win-win situation. So they have a tenant that just happens to be their son or daughter, for example, and it makes it a really great situation for everyone who's involved.
Yeah. And when you think of generational wealth that Americans have sit in their homes. That's how wealth is passed on to the next generation in the United States, which is through the passing on of a home.
Totally.
A lot of people don't have that. They don't start off with owning a home, but some people do.
Totally.
Now, this individual, his parents are able to keep the money within the family. And that's something that we preach all the time on this channel, because what we do is we practice something called infinite banking. And everyone that we know that is practicing infinite banking, at least for a generation, they all own the homes of their children.
Absolutely.
So they can keep that money within the family.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that, because that was the next point that I was going to make is, if we're all about owning our own lifestyle, if we're about financing our lifestyle, then we have to start taking control over some of the debt that is leaving our household. One being homeownership. That's a huge expense that is leaving our household every single year. So if our families can get involved, if we can come together, own each other's debt so that we can now keep the money within the family, it changes the game.
His largest expense was housing, $1,600. And that $1,600 he's able to keep within his family because his parents helped him purchase the house. They own the house together.
Exactly. So just think about that when we're thinking we're now parents. We think about that as far as it concerns with our daughter, with education, with whatever it is. We want to own everything that she has so that she can pay it all back to us and we can keep the money in the family.
Right. So now this changes the way I look at his budget, because we saw that his housing was $1,600. He was saving $600. So the top two largest expenses he has, he actually owns or gets to keep. Yeah. At least within his family
and within himself.
And within himself.
That's a game changer. And that's the other thing too.
That's $2,000.
He's saving over $600 a month off of a $45,000 salary. That's way more savings than I know anyone who's saving with $45,000 a year. Yeah. And he already said his default is saving. So think about this. We're watching this video just to expose you to what other people are doing with their money. And it is completely possible for you to save money. It's completely possible for you to pay yourself first, but you have to have a plan in place and you have to understand the significance of your spending and how much you would rather have the funds for yourself as opposed for someone else.
You really have to understand how to spend money in your needs versus your wants.
Exactly. He's
really figured out the importance of what is necessary for him to survive and the things that he doesn't necessarily have to have. He spends $14 on Netflix and that's his entertainment. But then he has a miscellaneous account, which he probably buys used video games or something.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever his discretion is. So Wealth Nation, if you want to understand how to become your own banking system and finance your lifestyle, then definitely click on the link below in the description so that we can serve you at the Wealth Nation. We'd love to help you take ownership of your finances so that you can create financial freedom for yourself and for your family. Let's keep going.
A lot of times people of color, immigrants, sometimes get priced out of communities. We see that happening in Boston's Chinatown, where I'm from. We see that happen sometimes in DC's neighborhoods. And if you own a home, then you're insulating yourself from being priced out. I think also...
That's gentrification. And we see that happen all the time, where like San Francisco, for example, if you don't own the house, then let's say the bank want all their money or something happens where the rates increase or whatever happens, you end up out of your home. That neighborhood is being re-gentrified for someone or another group of people that has more money than you. And he basically is saying that because he owns his house, he's insulated from that. It can't happen to him because he owns it.
Yep. And if anything, that can even be more of an asset because if people are trying to pack up that community, his house has now become a significant asset.
Exactly. It's worth even more money. Like for example, when we lived in Houston and there would be all these really nice houses, but then there would be like one house in the middle.
One old rundown
house where somebody's just like, I'm not going nowhere. You can build skyscrapers around me, but I'm right here.
I'm gonna hold this lot.
That's going to be this gentleman.
I'm not mad at him. Hold it.
Home ownership is not for everyone. I think that if you can do it, you should, but it does take a level of discipline that sometimes people just, might not like, because of the fact that it restricts a little bit of how you can spend your money.
I like, but before we go into this, it just dawned on me where he was saying home ownership isn't for everyone because you may run into issues where your money is restricted. And I totally believe that. I know we've said that on a few other videos, but
because you can't spend equity.
Well, not only can you not spend equity, but you also have to think about, with home ownership comes the repairs, comes the upkeep, comes all of that. And that's going to significantly restrict your expenses because you may be thinking that you're going to spend X amount of dollars for something of pleasure or leisure. And then you have to end up reallocating those funds to fix the sink or to fix the roof or something that happens. So that's something that you have to think about with home ownership, is just the expenses that could come up.
And that's an example of not properly budgeting, allocating funds for certain things.
Yeah. Some people aren't disciplined enough to know that we need to set money aside every month for this house.
Right. So important thing to take away is discipline when it comes to your budgeting, being realistic with yourself on what is really important to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did that for a little bit and then decided to come to DC because I was curious about politics at the national level. So working on Capitol Hill and in government sometimes requires many, many late nights. You'll be working sometimes till 9 and 10 at night, depending on what is going on, and sometimes the weekends if it's necessary. One of the reasons I make $45,000 in Washington, DC is because Congress votes against a cost of living adjustment every year, meaning that they and their staffers do not receive an increase in their salaries. This is problematic in many ways because it restricts the amount of salary that staffers and members of Congress can make, but it also makes it harder for people from disadvantaged and low-income backgrounds to get a job working for a member of Congress, senator.
Very interesting statistic. I think people assume that when you work for Congress that you're making buku funds, but their funding is restricted.
Yeah.
So it is something to take into consideration because a lot of the staffers, a lot of the employees or members of Congress do live inside the city. So how are they making it? Everybody has to have a plan somehow, or they're living outside of the city, but it's still expensive outside of the city in suburbia.
Yeah.
So things to consider.
One of the benefits of working in Washington, D.C. is you will go to events where sometimes there will be free food that helps to eliminate some of the food costs that you might occur. The other thing that's really beneficial about D.C. is that it's a very walkable city. It's a city where you can walk and bike relatively easily to get to where you need to go. I prefer to bike and use public transportation because it reduces my carbon footprint and a lot of times is much faster than driving a car.
Absolutely. We know many people who live in the city, and we've lived in many cities as well, where you don't need a car. So there goes one expense that you don't need, which is the car itself, gas, maintenance for that, taxes, whatever comes with it. It's a lot cheaper when you do the math and realize that you can grab a bike or you can grab public transportation.
Or just go old school and use
them 2 feet.
Those 2 feet.
For my retirement, I put in 5% of my monthly income into the TSP, which is the government's version of a 401k. And then the rest of the money that I save, I will accumulate and at the end of the year put into a Roth IRA. My tendency is to save and put all my money into the Roth IRA at the end of the year because I'm not sure if I need my money during the year for an emergency.
Very good point. So what he's doing, he's doing pre-tax and after-tax savings using the TSP and then also using the IRA, which is smart because, like he said, he does, or the after-tax piece of things, I'm totally a fan of. But he was saying, to the point you never know if he needs to tap into those funds when things come up.
Right, and I think it's very smart of him to do that because what I heard is the fact that he had a plan.
Yeah,
he actually has his money, putting his money aside for the future, for his retirement. Not the fact that, well, I'm going to put my money into this TSP or this 401k, and that's going to be that, my 5%. There's no way in the world you can retire it and just put aside 5% of your income.
Nope, not going to happen.
So I like the fact that he has a plan.
Yeah, he's doing something in addition to that 5%.
In addition to the 5%.
Yeah, because a lot of times what happens is we just put the 5, 6, 7, 10%, whatever it is, and we
spend the rest.
Yeah, and then we're like, that's our retirement. Then we get to retirement, like, wait a second, this wasn't enough. And then on top of that, taxes and inflation, and then next thing you know, we got to keep working. So It's always very important that you have a separate plan for your retirement.
And Victor is 26 years old.
I really think that money is a tool in life.
Ooh, tool, right? I think Wealth Nation, you've heard us say that money is a tool. You have to say, that we've said that money is a tool. I'm so glad that he said that, reiterating that. And he said money is not something that needs to be idolized. How would you explain that people just idolize money these days?
No, I don't think people necessarily idolize money. They idolize what money can do for them.
Get them.
They idolize the phantom ghosts. They idolize the red bottom shoes. They idolize the things that they can buy with money that doesn't add value to them. Cars doesn't add value to you.
No.
It's a depreciating asset. And shoes,
all the stuff that's in your house doesn't do anything for you.
Right. All the stuff that you have, it doesn't do anything for you. Now, if you're using those funds to buy assets, then it's a different story. Money is meant to be spent. And the money, just
how you spend it.
Exactly. The money that you have sitting in your pocket right now is actually depreciating because of inflation. So it's really important for us to, just like Victor said, to not idolize money, but to use money as a tool, which is what it's for. It's no different from a hammer or a screwdriver when building a house. It's a tool to help you accomplish the big goal.
I'm with you. Love it. Thank you, Victor, for reiterating that.
It's very important, but it's not something that should be idolized or glorified. It's just a means to your day-to-day lifestyle. I personally feel that most people who come to DC aren't necessarily in it for the money, because it's very hard to make money initially here. I just think that that's what makes life so interesting, right? You have some people like New York, perhaps. You probably find a lot of people in finance that are just completely obsessed with money because that's all they do every day. They just manage money. And some people, that's just not their driving factor. Money is something that personally for me is important. I would like, obviously, to make more money, but it's not something
nice story. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, CNBC, for bringing this to us.
Yeah. What are your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts are, I was actually floored, because when you brought this video to me, I was thinking 45 grand in DC. I'm like, ain't no way.
I was thinking the same thing. That's why I watched it.
Carry the 1, add 2 plus 7. We're behind.
Hey, I swear, we spent $500 just to drive through DC.
No, exactly. And we're only, 20 minutes away. So this completely opened up my eyes, because it made me recognize that, or two things. It made me recognize that we, for example, we are on a plan, which is nice to see other people who are on a plan doing things, to make sure that they're maximizing their funding, that they're spending. So that made me feel good. But then the other thing too, it made me realize, people who live in cities aren't necessarily making buku funds, that they're making do with what they have. And so I think we always just assume that when you live inside a large city, DC, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, wherever it is, that you have to be making 6 figures in order to make it. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. And what I didn't notice in this video is Victor ever comparing himself to anybody else. Because when you compare yourself to somebody else and what they have, you look at your situation and what you have is, I don't have enough. Or you end up in debt because you want to get that fancy car when you know you can't afford it.
That's a really good point, Darius. I
didn't see Victor compare himself to anyone. He had his own plan, his own blinders on, focus on his specific situation. And I think that's something that we can really take from this video and learn from, is that we need to focus on our own situation, not what somebody's doing next door, not what the next person is driving down the street in. We don't need to worry about what anyone else is doing.
Beautiful point, because at the end of the day, the next person isn't going to affect our pockets. We are the ones who affect our pockets.
They don't know how much money we're bringing into our household and what we're doing with it.
And one thing I was also thinking of too, it's actually nice to live inside of cities because there's so much things that you can do outside for free. There's so many entertainment things and things that you can do. So it makes it really nice to live in an area as convenient as DC, where you can just go outside and have a ton of fun and not have to spend any money.
Right. So Victor can live in DC for $45K. We actually bring in a little more than that. Is DC a place that you feel like you can move to now after seeing this video?
Yes, 100%.
So a 2-bedroom apartment?
Yes, we can do a 2-bedroom apartment.
Okay, what about finding free food?
Oh yeah, that's totally doable. You don't think so? No,
I think we can, but I don't think you would go for it.
Why? Because of the specific food?
Yeah.
All we got to do is have you show your pearly whites around the city. We get whatever we need, babe.
Oh, okay. If that's what you say.
No, I'm just teasing. But when we're thinking about free food, I was saying yes, because my brother, who is a manager of a restaurant in DC, we could totally get free food. That's what I was thinking. Connections, ladies and gentlemen. It's who you know, not what you know. Right. So anyways, but being serious, going back to this, the CNBC Make It series is actually something that we've been watching, something that we really like, because it helps us just put things into perspective as far as when it comes to money.
In real life
scenarios
and how people spend money.
So comment below. Let us know what you think about us doing more reaction videos on the CNBC series, because there's a slew of other videos that we could comment on, that we could share with you, because we think it's really great for you guys to see from other perspectives, to see what else is going on out there. Right.
And while you're commenting, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because we have a lot of views on our channel, but we don't have the subscribers to match. There's about 77% of the people that watch our videos that don't subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. What are you guys waiting on?
So in the bottom corner,
of these,
click on the link below. Click on the link in the video to subscribe to our channel.
And also hit that notifications bell so that you're notified every single time we post new videos.
Right. Now, we spoke a lot about Victor and how he spends money. Now, one thing that we did speak about is how he's not comparing himself to anyone else. So what I want you to do is click on our next video, where we explain to you 4 things that poor people do that rich people don't.
And remember to own your own lifestyle,
or someone else will.